If every game for the rest of the year could be like Washington and Oregon, I would be incredibly pleased. This was a game that was back and forth, a rivalry game that had great energy, back and forth, late game theatrics. You had everything in this game, and it was really exciting. You had big plays, you had stars show out, and there were so many things that happened that made this such an incredible game. It was a game that we were all highly anticipating, and it did not disappoint. When you look at what Washington and Oregon were able to do, there were some things that obviously were frustrating for both sides, but also you saw big time playmakers make big time plays, and that was really fun to watch. It was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of, I think, excitement that we really wanted from this game, and we got it. So today we'll look at what exactly happened in one of the most incredible games in college football this year. We'll start with the Oregon side of things because Oregon had quite a bit to talk about. I think we'll start with some positives. The running game with Bucky Irving, to me, is something that flies under the radar. Bucky Irving continues to be one of the most underrated running backs in college football. You look at his ability to make guys miss, his whether it's contact balance, whether it's his ability to plant his foot in the ground and make a guy miss that way, his agility, his ability to create space for himself, that flies under the radar. I don't think a ton of people know Bucky Irving's name, but he is one of the best running backs in college football. And when you flip on the tape, you will see exactly that. And to me, that was a big difference for Oregon. I think that their balance, we talked about the balance of Oregon's offense, and when you look at the stats, it shows. They were the more balanced team offensively. Not that that made a difference in the result, but we knew they were going to be the more balanced team. And to me, Bucky Irving and Jordan James, their ability to run the football efficiently helped the passing attack. Because when you look at the second half, Washington was, I wouldn't say selling out, but play action really was effective. The fact that Troy Franklin was left one on one had a lot to do with the fact that play action was doing a lot of damage because they were running the football so well, because Irving and James were giving Washington so much trouble. They had to respect the run, so they almost bit up too far on some of these plays, and Troy Franklin was left wide open. I think that the 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 ability of Troy Franklin is great already, and now you gave him one-on-one matchups against a secondary that was not prepared for him. They did not know how to handle it. And Troy Franklin made some incredible plays. He made some incredible catches. And it was a lot of it had to do with Oregon's ability to run the football. I think that if Oregon does not run the football as efficiently as it does, then this passing attack wouldn't have been as efficient as what we saw. I think that the defense, obviously, we knew Washington was going to do what they were going to do. We knew that they had the capability of making big plays and making explosive plays. But I think the fact that they sent a lot of pressure early helped them quite a bit. And honestly, if not for Dan Lanning's blunders and his inability to just give the ball back to Washington and punt it or take 3 points instead of seven, I think that there were a lot of things that hurt, but Oregon to me did a lot of good things against Washington's offense. I think that they sent a lot of pressure because they knew that Washington wanted to throw the ball deep. They wanted to get in Michael Penix's head, and they did that early. I think that was something good that they did early, and obviously injuries affected kind of the second half, but I think that they did a good job up front of trying to get after Michael Penix. But I think also Washington had a counter to that, and we'll talk about that more on the Washington side of things. But the pressure that Oregon was sending, I think helped quite a bit early on. I think it helped slow down what Washington wanted to do. And even in the second half, that helped too, especially when you lost your two starting quarterbacks in the same play. I think that when you send in Turquoise Bridges, you needed to be able to get more pressure. Early on, I think he did well. I think that he was ready for the moment, but ultimately you have too much talent for Washington for him to be able to keep up. And that's where the pressure really came in. I think Washington could have put up more points and more yards had the front seven not done a good job of creating pressure. I think Michael Penix got hit quite a bit. You could see that he was injured. You could see that he was laboring. And that was because this front seven did a great job of getting in his face and forcing him to get the ball out early. To me, play calling for both teams was questionable in the red zone. I think that these are two teams that know how to do a lot of exciting things when it's not in the red zone, when you're in your own territory, you have a lot of open field. I think they do a good job. The Oregon rollout at the end of the first half, I just don't understand the play call. Now, that being said, technically it should have worked. If Bo Nix throws the ball when he's supposed to, Troy Franklin is open for a touchdown. So he should have thrown that. So that's not entirely on the coaching staff. But I just don't understand when you needing a play and you roll out and you're essentially just given one option. That's the frustrating part. Later in the game, you have another fourth down, and you essentially only look, you have quads to the right, and you have Troy Franklin on the left. You throw the essentially the fade, the back shoulder fade to Troy Franklin, and it doesn't work. Now I understand Troy Franklin's impact, but also when you look at the amount of space you had on the other side and the fact that they had a slant that was wide open on the backside, it would have been a walk-in touchdown. I believe it's Trayshawn Holden that would have essentially just walked in. I just don't understand the focusing in on one player and just doing that. I think that at certain levels you can do that, and for certain coaches you can do that, but I don't think Oregon has the talent where you can just focus in on one player, especially in the red zone. And that was really frustrating to watch. And I think that Washington too, Washington had a drive where you saw them run the ball 4 times when it was goal to go. And Michael Penix was getting hit, like we talked about, and he was hurt. But he also made some passes on that drive, and you don't attempt one single pass with the amount of talent you have at wide receiver. I don't understand that play calling. And you needed a big time score, and you didn't get it. Oregon got the stop. And again, shout out to that front seven, but they did a good job of slowing down that offense, and that was just bad play calling to me. Even with quarterback being hurt, if he's still out there, he can make a throw to me, and that's my opinion. But I think that the fourth down calls for Oregon were way worse than anything Washington did. That was just the one red zone trip where I was scratching my head at what Washington was doing. Washington to me had a really good strategy offensively. I think that they saw something on the edge and they wanted to attack it. They wanted to attack Oregon's cornerbacks, their outside linebackers. They were throwing a lot of things to the sidelines. They did a lot of good things of stretching this defense, opening it up east to west. And then later they hit some big gash plays up the middle of the seams. But they did a great job of continuously spreading out this defense and moving the ball sideline to sideline. They threw a lot of quick passes to the side. They threw some really nice deep balls. Michael Penix threw some nice passes to Romeo Dunze, to Jalen Polk. I think that the fact that they had Jalen McMillan early and then lost him was something we're not talking about enough. But the fact that you have Polk and Odunze shows exactly the depth that you need. And then they were, like I said, they were attacking outside of the hashes, and that was, I think, a good strategy for them. They were able to use space. And when you look at some of the touchdowns they had, when you saw the essentially the slot fade to Jalen Polk, that was a nice throw by Michael Penix, but also it was a great play call. You get Oregon in a tough situation where you're in man-to-man coverage. You give Michael Penix extra room to throw, and the result obviously was a touchdown. I think they did a great job overall of calling plays. I think they used space very well, and they knew that Oregon's strength was in the middle. They knew that their defensive line and the linebackers were going to be a strength, so they attacked outside, made them run sideline to sideline, kind of break them down a little bit, and then they were able to capitalize when they needed to. I think another thing is when Kyrie Jackson went down and Triquez Bridges comes in, they went right after Bridges. Now, I will say Bridges held his own for a little while. I think he did a good job of competing right away and not backing down, but ultimately you have too much talent in Polk and Odunze, and eventually that won out. They did not back away after a couple of unsuccessful trips, and they continued to go at what was considered to them probably a weakness of this defense. They continued to attack the DBs. They continued to attack everything that they thought was a weakness for Oregon. And ultimately, Oregon gave them a gift by going for it on fourth down around midfield. And Washington wasted little time going on top. And then obviously the missed field goal at the end pretty much seals it. I think that if things continue going the way that they're going, we will see these two teams play for the Pac-12 title. And when you're looking at what happened in the Pac-12 this weekend, USC lost, Utah is not really what it is. Oregon State, I think, could be a potential problem. I mean, it's still going to be a very tough slate to win out. But I think this is the best two options for the Pac-12 and playoff implications. You really want these two teams who I think have the best opportunities to make things happen in terms of the college football playoff. This game had everything you wanted. Like I said, you had back and forth battles. You had players making big plays. You had stars shining when you wanted them to. Everyone that we expected to play well outside of McMillan, and he obviously was hurt, played how we thought they should play. I think that Oregon's offensive line took care of business. The rushing attack for Washington was surprising at times. The defense for Washington stepped up a little bit at times, and it was really fun to watch. I think this was everything we wanted in a top 10 matchup, and we saw the results. It was really fun. It was a really entertaining game, and I think that if we can get more of these games, you're going to see a lot of exciting things for college football. But keep an eye on what we could see in a rematch between those two teams, because I don't know if there are many teams that in the Pac-12 that can compete with these two. And if we get a rematch of these two teams, then I think we're in store for an incredible Pac-12 championship game.